Okay, good. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. My name is Yulee Newsome, president and founder of CivCom. I want to introduce myself. So I'm a submarine veteran. Pointer. There we go. That's me. Nice and adorable, but eventually became that hot mess over on the right there. But first generation college, extraordinarily thankful to the military for everything that it did for me. I mean, this guy here is Admiral Mullen, chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it was because of the military that I had an amazing amount of opportunities that helped me leave the South Bronx and make my family proud. So a lot of CivCom is me and my opportunity to give back to other people that haven't had similar resources that I've had. So I want to thank Uber in particular, Eric. Eric has been a massive champion for this event. As you guys might guess, getting into these companies and getting them to feed us and give us food is not an easy effort. So you need that internal champion. And I want to thank Eric for being that internal champion for us. And also thank all of you. So a lot of what's happening here, the goal here is to record and get information out to current military families that allows them to improve their reintegration experience. It's tough. I tell a lot of folks, if you think about a college campus, and think of that college campus not having a career office, not having an alumni office, and no access. You can't leave the college campus. This is what it's like for our military families to try and get civilian jobs. Because while you're in the military, you're focused on your boss's priorities. And that has nothing at all to do with a lot of the civilian careers that folks are interested in. So that then transition to those civilian careers winds up being very, very tough. So getting folks to come together and let folks in the military know, hey, this challenge is coming, and here are some of the things you can do to make it easier for yourself is what this evening is about. And you guys participating in it definitely makes it much more successful. Just a note, our next event is going to be at Airbnb on October 24th, which is a Tuesday, not the third Thursday. We normally try and do the third Thursday, but Airbnb wasn't able to accommodate on that day. So we're doing it on the 24th. You'll all get the Eventbrite invitation, and you're more than welcome to forward that to other veterans you know, as well as allies, the support of civilians that are interested in helping current military families get the information they need to transition easier. Okay, so just here's some facts that a lot of people wind up getting surprised by. Every year, 250,000 veterans leave the military. And first off, if you're to just join the military, you're more likely in the US to join the military if you come from a lower income family. That's me, hands down, and almost everyone else that I know that has joined the military. You join the military as a way to change, you know, the circumstances that you're coming from as a strong opportunity for you. 80% of the veterans leave the military without a job lined up. We have 500,000 veterans that are unemployed. 70% of the veterans are disengaged in the jobs that they wound up getting. And 80% of the veterans wind up leaving their first post-military job within 2 years. Now, why does this happen? Well, like I said, if you have think of this college campus that we're talking about, right? Like while you're at college, you're learning everything you need to, and you're focused on getting your classes done. But there's a huge amount of effort that needs to be invested in you figuring out, okay, when I get out, what are the right options for me? The wrong options outnumber the right options. What's underemployment? Underemployment is where I'm getting paid, but I hate the day that I spend at work. That's not a win for anyone. You know, what instead people want is when you can actually go to a job and you're excited about everything you're doing. You wind up waking up and you're excited about taking on the challenges that are coming your way. Well, if you go into the military like I did after high school, how can you possibly know where you belong in the civilian workforce? How can you know what investment of time and preparation you need to undertake in order to be competitive in that space? As I've told a lot of folks, there are no veterans jobs. There are jobs for which veterans can apply, but everybody else is applying for that exact same job. And you get that job because you're the best candidate, not because you're a veteran. So what is CivCom? CivCom is a nonprofit that helps current military families create civilian career plans using a network of veterans and supportive civilians. So basically what we're trying to do is, while folks are still in the military, that career office, that alumni office, that access to the talent market, we're trying to bring that to them as early as possible so that when they get out, they don't fall into a pit of chaos and wind up taking jobs that they actually don't like or that are unfulfilling, and instead can transition directly into the career that they consider rewarding. So what is it we wind up doing? We're basically just trying to build a nice little bridge here, right? Now, job search is tough. Everybody here knows it's like a full-time job in and of itself. And so, yeah, doing job search while preparing for job search while you're still working is going to be tough. There is no way around that. That is the standard. You are expected, if you're going to get job offers these days, to meet the standard that everybody else is meeting when they are trying to do, when they're trying to go into a new organization. So this necessarily means that you are going to be exhausted and tired learning about a completely new culture, learning about a business, how they generate value, who their customers are, who their competitors are, and why you actually belong in that organization. You need to know that. If you don't, you wind up in a situation where you wait until the last minute before you go to a transition assistance program or something like that. At best, you're going to wind up getting a resume, which isn't necessarily competitive. And then you're going to fall into this pit of chaos here, where you have a bunch of different websites and a bunch of different companies and a bunch of different roles and a bunch of different locations. And by the time you figured out, what actually makes sense for you, you're probably going to wind up settling for something that allows you to continue paying your bills. The financial pressures are what are going to wind up dominating your decision. But instead, if you start out as early as you possibly can, and I tell folks, I don't care how early you choose to start. If you want to do it as a recruit, if you want to do it, 5 years in advance of getting out, there's no downside to starting that research early and then understanding how that market continues to move and then deciding to get out when you decide to get out. So what's the first thing we do? We give an assessment that helps you figure out, on the basis of your interest, skills, and motivations, which career makes most sense for you. So this actually happens to be the output of a F-18 fighter pilot who's planning to get out in 3 years. And something that we noticed for him is, the most exciting career that he's interested in is in going into private equity. Problem is, he doesn't have an MBA, and there's no way he's going to get him in private equity coming directly out of the military. So what he needs to figure out is whether or not he wants to go and get an MBA. Something that's secondary for him is securities trading, right? An opportunity he can get into, but he doesn't need to necessarily get an MBA to do that. What we also integrated into this conversation, though, is that he's an F-18 fighter pilot with interests at SpaceX. So then we just reached out to the folks at SpaceX and said, hey, listen, if I'm an F-18 fighter pilot, what does a transition from the military look like directly into SpaceX? And it turns out that they have a test pilot opportunity for people that are interested and qualify for the opportunity. Turns out that that was the most exciting opportunity that he was interested in pursuing. He connected with the veterans that are at SpaceX. He's now further along the path of being a competitive candidate for a test pilot at SpaceX. But what this does is it says, hey, listen, if you're coming out and you're planning, in his case, for example, to go into investment banking or human resources or general management, those are things that he was likely not going to wind up being happy to do. And we can wind up avoiding a lot of that headache early on by taking an assessment. The assessment is created by 2 career psychologists at Harvard Business School. All the top business schools wind up using it, and it helps you as a guide to figure out, okay, what makes sense for me? What should I even be investing my time into? Then we help them do career research. So no matter what anyone's telling you, the website is not sufficient for you to figure out how to become offer ready. There's no way you're going to get all the information you need to know from a hiring manager that's interested in giving an offer from the website. You're going to have to talk to some folks that understand the role, understand the 9-to-5 day in the life, why they like it, why they don't like it, what are the keywords and tricky phrases that they like for the particular role. So what we do is we connect them with people that understand these different roles. So in the case of the fighter pilot that wanted to go to SpaceX, we connected him with the folks at SpaceX. So he's not sitting there staring at the SpaceX website, going into a variety of dead ends, because like we said, of course, the website is not designed for what it is he's trying to do, this particular user case. Instead, we knew folks at SpaceX, who are the veterans there, connected him with the veterans, and now they've taken him under his wing, and now he's off and running. For him, the next step is going to be, okay, coming up with this career plan. In 1 to 2 years, test pilot at SpaceX. So does he have the education, the experience, and the skills? If not, what's his plan to come up with a way such that by the time he decides to get out, he's checked all the necessary boxes? And you have a short-term, mid-term, and long-term goal as well. So the mid-term is 2 to 5, and the long-term is greater than 5. We're expecting specificity for these career plans, because of course, if you go and start talking to a hiring organization, they want to know exactly what is it you want to do and why are you here. And this plan, along with the research that they're doing, allows them to give granularity that allows them to stand out above all the other candidates. So this winds up being, I think this is a win for everyone. It's a win, of course, for the current military family. It's a win for the corporation. You allow people to avoid the pit of chaos. And now these organizations don't have to go into the pit of chaos in order to recruit people. It winds up being much easier for everyone involved. And also because you've asked about their interests and motivations early on, you can wind up making sure that they stay there, which improves the retention costs. Instead of people, again, going into opportunities simply because it'll wind up paying the bills and then wind up leaving because there's a mismatch between the hiring experience and the work experience. And of course, yeah, this winds up being a win for the nation because we generate recruiting challenges if people see military service as an efficient path to underemployment. Instead, it has to be seen as, wow, this is a great opportunity. I want to join the military because this is a way for me to get to an opportunity that I'm interested in. So the ask for you guys, all the ones that haven't done it yet, is to go to our website, civcomready.org, and under Ready to Mentor, you'll have an opportunity to sign up. And basically what'll happen is we will ask you to pick one of these careers here, one that matches you most closely. And then when a person in the military takes the assessment and then comes out with an outcome that matches yours, we'll just go ahead and connect them directly to you so that you can then say, okay, I happen to be in operations, and in my job, this is what operations looks like. This is what you'll see on the website here. So it's really simple. We're basically just trying to, like I said, understand which career you're going to go ahead and sign up. We want to know what your bandwidth is. Are you interested in doing this, once a week or once a year? There's no judgment about the answer. And are you a veteran? The role of the veteran and understanding the veterans is important because the veteran can help with that English to English translation. If you are a veteran that transitioned into a particular job, it's like, oh, you would be huge in helping a current military person understand how their experience relates to something that a civilian hiring manager or recruiting manager would be looking for. And finally, this is my experience, right? I was a nuclear engineer on submarines. If I had transitioned out the way that everyone expected me to, I would have been sitting in some nuclear power plant in the country. It would be a suboptimal work experience for all of us, because I didn't enjoy staring at gauges when I was on a submarine. I don't understand why I'd want to do that for the rest of my life. What is more exciting is going into strategic planning and understanding how businesses actually work, going into general management and figuring out, oh, okay, at a high level, at a strategic level, where are we going to wind up going? But where I absolutely found my fit was in sales. I love carrying the bag and going to talk to customers. That's a lot of fun for me. I enjoyed it. I enjoy the price increases, and I enjoy taking them, to football games and things like that. Everything about that experience is enjoyable to me. Not sitting in a room staring at gauges. And this is what I want to try and help everyone in the military get to, right? Like, I don't think any of this has to do with skills. It has to do with helping people understand what they're interested in and how they can connect to opportunities to do that. So the next step here is for us to talk to some veterans from Uber. We have one mic there. And the goal is to talk about the reintegration experience of people, that have gotten out. And, what we've heard in these other sessions is that a lot of folks will say, wow, I didn't know it was so tough. And so now actually, I know you as a veteran, knowing that you've gone through these challenges, it brings a whole new dimension to what the reintegration experience is like. So I'm going to try and start talking less, which is tough for me, and give more of the veterans an opportunity to start explaining their own reintegration experience. So you'll want to turn it on. And yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Can everybody hear me? Hey, thanks for coming in. My name is Sean Colley. I work here at Uber on our executive recruiting team as a recruiting coordinator. U.S. Army. I've been in the reserves now for about going on 6 years. Happily on my way out, but it's one where I'm very proud of what I was able to do and very excited to let you know a little bit more about the opportunities we have here as well.
You want to talk about immigration?
Oh, sure. That's kind of a weird thing, I guess, because I'm still in. But for me,
what do you do in the Army?
I am a fat little officer now. I am a 92 Alpha. It's a logistics officer. We run a cargo crisp yard up in Sacramento, where mostly we get to move around calamars and other cool stuff, and all the cool little trucks and everything you got to play with as a kid. I drive the bigger versions of those, so it's a lot of fun. For what we actively are looking to do right now, we are not in our deployment year, so we got passed over. So right now we're in garrison, kind of recuperating from the last, I want to say 8 years, where we had a lot of people go back and forth overseas. And we're really trying to build back up our forces and get guys to want to come to our unit in Sacramento. More on the civilian side, I have a weird career path for most people. When I got out, I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was kind of the height of the recession around 2012, 13. And initially, I was in a quandary a lot of people look for, which is, can I just get a job because I'm not sure what I want to do? And I wound up going to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is actually a great organization for people who are transitioning and just looking to learn business skills. From there, I was very fortunate to get into recruiting. I started at LinkedIn prior to this, and by some fortunate grace, I got the opportunity to come work at Uber and have been here for over a year now.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Eric Schroeder, General Manager here in Northern California on the Uber operations team. I was Army 2004 to 2009, so I got out in 2009, and my grand plan was to take advantage of the GI Bill, and so I went to grad school. About 3 weeks into grad school, I walked into the office and said, I'm quitting. I was so restless. I was about 4 months out of Afghanistan and just kind of pissed off and full of rage and idiot students talking about things. And but luckily, the exact same day I walked in, the U.S. Army paid my whole tuition for the semester because I was on terminal leave. So it was quite a lucky break. And then my whole plan was to go to the CIA. That's what I thought I wanted to do. But then a few months in, I'm like, I didn't want to work for the government ever again. I want to go into business. So I kind of switched my whole focus within grad school. And I think it's a great way to sort of figure yourself out, think about things. Ended up going into management consulting for 3 years, which was a perfect transition for me because it allowed me to kind of get business skills, see different things, and kind of get that credibility that you don't necessarily have coming straight out of the Army. I was enlisted. So I did management consulting for 3 years, and then that kind of gave me the opportunity to come to Uber. So I've been at Uber for about 2.5 years now.
Oh, yeah. I'm an imposter. I'm actually not a veteran. I'm a diversity business partner here at Uber. I'm helping set the strategy and also like basically train people on how to think about diverse backgrounds in hiring, diverse backgrounds in terms of like support and managing. I actually designed and launched Uber's first diversity training program. So I've been doing a lot of that work, but just also really excited to be here and answer any questions on the diversity side for Uber.
What do you think about, so a lot of folks will go down the road and say that college isn't for everyone. You know, especially here in the Bay Area as well. Folks will say that college isn't for everyone. And just full disclosure, the CivCom stance is that if you come to us, you're going to college. It's just not a debate for us. I mean, I personally do not understand how you are going to compete in the 21st century talent market without a college degree, but that's our opinion. If you have a different one, feel free to express it. But what would you say to a current soldier, sailor, Marine that's thinking, look, I want to come out here and I don't think college is necessarily the route I need to go through in order to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I kind of indicated, I think one of the huge benefits of the Army or the military is the GI Bill, and especially the post 9/11 GI Bill. It's, you know, you can go to top-notch schools for free. And well, I guess they're changing it at times, but some you can. It depends on the school. But in general, you know, it's a fantastic benefit. And I think if you look at the U.S. post-World War II, right, the GI Bill paid for itself like 20 times over just in gain tax income from the country, from these well-educated people. So maybe college isn't for everybody, but I think for every veteran, if you have access to the GI Bill, whether it's grad school, law school, undergrad, computer science degree, whatever it is, to me, it's a no-brainer to take advantage of that as much as possible.
In my experience, college really shouldn't be something that's intimidating or feel something that should force you into a career track. Simply because you start out in an educational field doesn't mean that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Ask anyone at this company. We've had people who started out as biomedical students or people with philosophy degrees who went on to be engineering managers here. I'm kind of unique in the sense that I had a college degree before I went in the Army. I did not start out in business. I was actually a teacher, and I got out at a time when they didn't need teachers in the world. And kind of trolling around a little bit, I unfortunately wound up homeless for a little bit before choosing to go back to grad school. The Army gave me the opportunity to narrow my focus, but really what you want to know is simply because something looks daunting does not mean you shouldn't take the road to that. Use college as an opportunity to figure out two things: what you want to do, what's your passion, what excites you, but also what you don't want to do. It shouldn't be something like, oh, I feel I have to get this job because this is the only way. What inspires you? Is it your family? Do you have a rock behind you? Is there something, an interest or a passion in your life that's really driving you? Or maybe if you were in for 20 years, what was something you always wanted to do that you never had the chance? College is the perfect time to explore that. Don't turn down a resource simply because you don't think it's right for you. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people in the Bay Area who would testify like, hey, I didn't need college because I started my own company. But that didn't mean it didn't give them a means to start out as something. So I definitely encourage all of you to utilize your GI Bill or any other scholarships and resources that are available as well.
So let's talk a little bit more about the homeless experience. You threw that in there. Like, how did that manifest itself? Like, so like you're getting out of the military, then what? Like,
well, I was homeless before I went into the military for a brief period of time in South Central Los Angeles. There were days where I didn't know if I was going to have enough money to eat by the end of the day. I was a day laborer most of the time. And I started out as a grad student who couldn't get enough money because they shut down a lot of our loan programs. And it came to a point in my life where I didn't want the same experience when I was transitioning out of the Army. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I knew two things. I never wanted to struggle the way my family had for the last 4 years. And I used that as my motivation to complete my graduate degree, but also to go out and say I would make the best of any opportunity that came in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not always the one you think. I actually went to my first job interview when there were probably about 25 other people in the room, all going for the same position. And these were people that had MBAs or more experience than me. And it was at the point where I had been to dozens of jobs before then and say, I have no chance getting this. But the gentleman I was speaking to was actually a Navy vet. It is a smaller world than you think. And he said, hey, don't be afraid. Come here and talk with me for a little bit. One thing led to another, and I was actually there for 2 years. So it really shouldn't daunt you for any opportunity, be it with Uber or anything in the Valley, simply because you don't think you can do something doesn't mean you shouldn't ask about it.
Eric, how would you talk about the talent market to someone that's in the military right now that has no idea what's coming their way and sort of thinks, I got it, I'm fine. You know, I've done plenty of tough stuff. I can easily get in the talent market and just find a job. Like, what would you say to them in order to change that mindset?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the military itself is not enough.
Right.
The experience you have is not enough, and I think especially in a country where less than 1 or 2% of the people serve, no one has any idea what military folks have gone through. They know it's great. They know you're overseas doing great work, but what does that actually mean day to day? I think that's really hard to translate. But I think if you compare that with college or a degree or something else, then you're unique. Right? There's a lot of vets. There's a lot of people who have gone to college or have done this. There's very few who have done both. And I think you got to find a way to sort of leverage your military experience to make you more interesting, to make you more relatable, right? It's not enough, but it is a distinguishing factor. So you got to figure out how to pair it with something else that makes you interesting, right? Because it's always interesting. I used to joke, going to any interview and just say, well, I was drinking a Coke in Kabul. He was like, oh, wow, yeah. Say more about that, because I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. But then you got to build on it, and you got to show it's there.
How did you go about translating it?
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of honestly, I think it takes a lot of personal reflection, and you got to know, the interview you're going into, what are they looking for, right? They're going to look for leadership under pressure or making a decision that your boss didn't agree with. And that's a really easy surface level question. We think, oh, I've got this. I'm in the military, so we don't prepare for it. But actually, you got to spend hours writing out every story you have, every example you have of that, and then tailoring it and practicing it, and then making it relevant to business, right? And showing, how you used influencing techniques or whatever it is to change someone's mind or to make a decision under pressure that's relatable to business. I think a lot of people they take those personal experience questions and just say, oh, I was in the military, I'm a great leader. But actually, you got to go 3 or 4 levels deeper and really show that. And I think that's what is the hardest thing to actually do. I think that's why I see most people fail, is they just take that for granted. But you actually need to really show that.
So I have a question for the civilian. Is leadership important when you're looking at candidates? Like, I've taken the perspective that a lot of the challenge that military folks have is that we're selling leadership, and that's not exactly what a lot of organizations are buying at the moment. Like, they might be bringing you in for a role where they're not looking for leadership just yet. They're expecting you to come in and sort of figure the spot out, deliver a couple of results, then they'll put you in a leadership position. So for some folks, I've said, stop selling leadership because the organization isn't buying it. But how would you react to that?
I think it really depends on the cultural values of the company, because I think, for better or for worse, I really think at Uber, selling leadership would play very well. Okay. I think we're always looking for, we call it like people who are athletes, people who are leaders in their own right, people who are principled and not afraid of confrontation. And so my advice would actually be to look for companies that value a lot of the same things that you're selling. And I also just want to call out something that we're really working on is actually, we did like a really intensive workshop recently with our executive leaders on like a shift we need to make in how we think about talent and how we think about like cultural add, and really like getting comfortable with hiring from backgrounds that like are not our own. And so I think like this is also a really great time to kind of like strike when the iron's hot, because we have a very healthy buzz of people that are like, oh, right, I really should be looking for candidates that are outside my comfort or my background. And so I think that, coupled with like unique leadership stories that you can bring in, would really play well here.
Okay.
I can't speak for every company.
Sure. What's the business case for diversity at Uber?
At Uber specifically, the diversity case is, we actually have a diversity statement now that says that we really believe it's transformative for our business. We've done a lot of work, and it's like embedded in every part of our training, and actually now the coaching that executives are getting here, that like true authentic diversity, which is difference in like background, experience, and thought, and not just like the ones we think about when we think about diversity, but true difference in background, experience, and thought pushes innovation, challenges assumptions, and moves us away from like a groupthink mentality that like really is prevalent at a lot of tech companies. And so if you really, I mean, there are Harvard case studies on this that prove it over and over and over again, even a recent McKinsey study that proves that, you know, gender diversity, ethnic diversity, racial diversity, and even background diversity at the top of a company makes it more successful. And so I think, like, again, we have a lot of top-down and bottom-up pressure right now as a company, that the business case is like on fire. It's really catching fire. That just, if we really want to be innovative, and we've prided ourselves as a company for being something, you know, no one ever thought would work. So why not also bring that to diversity, right? And I think, I don't know, I'm just really inspired by that same mentality that drove us into a market that no one thought would work. Bringing that mentality to hiring like real authentic diversity.
Yeah, go for it.
I think additionally to what Bretton said, I mean, Uber is a company that serves, you know, every class and demographic of the United States, right? We're in every single state, every single city. Not just our riders come from every sort of background, but really our drivers are everything from airline pilots to doctors to immigrants to people who used to be on welfare. I mean, it spans the whole base. And if we don't have empathy and understanding for the entire mosaic of this country, like, Uber's not going to succeed. And it's little things, you know, like, for example, in San Francisco, right, a lot of our drivers are ESL, right? They speak Chinese or they speak Spanish as their first language. Like, are we actually talking to them in their own language? And before we never did, we just kind of send these texts out like, go drive, you know, and it was just horribly ineffective.
Yeah.
You probably know what I'm talking about. It was man who works with a driver. So I think like that also just representing our society as well is extremely important for all companies, but really for Uber as well.
I do one more thing that actually is new. So you just reminded me too that we actually just started 2 really awesome pilots for driver conversion. And so like, we actually think a huge miss too in the diversity aspect is just like, we haven't been trying to actively recruit drivers as people who could then work inside the company, and building like a pipeline of drivers to then be like awesome employees that know exactly what happens on the front lines of our business. So I think, you know, that really, really reflects a mindset shift, I think, just in our company, that like, we really need to start hiring diversely and from every background, and really make the company representative of the huge diverse community that we serve.
The goal from a recruiting aspect as well is to get a message out that hasn't always been channeled for a lot of what we've been doing here. And that's, we want to give everybody the opportunity to have a chance to come talk to us about working at Uber. No matter where you're from, no matter background, we want you to come and reach out if you're really interested in doing it. The veterans community as a whole encompasses one of the largest diverse fields of the American population, be it your ethnic background, your demographic, or anything else that is unique about you. We want you to come talk to us. You shouldn't be afraid to even just reach out to someone you see and say, hey, I saw something I liked and I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about it. Our goal is to say, I work at Uber, come talk to me.
Okay, that's great. Well, I will be getting your information. And we're gonna open it up. So if you have some questions, keep them on the tip of your tongue, because I'm going to ask one more question and then open it up. But I do think it is a little interesting that you have the drivers and then you also have corporate. And are you trying to break that gap down, I guess, and be like, look, it's all just one company and we see diversity, you know, amongst the drivers and amongst the company as our goal? Or is there some other push that that you would say characterizes your efforts right now?
Strategically, and for the first time, I mean, we'll never break down like the barrier in terms of like the company, because we have driver partners and then we have the company. But
Okay.
for the first time strategically in our diversity strategy, we actually have called out drivers as a plank that we want to inspire the same feelings in them that we see corporate.
Okay.
So we actually, our framework calls for ensuring that everybody feels safe, supported, welcomed, and proud. And then off of those kind of like core components, we call out behaviors that would drive that. We're actually making sure that we've said that we want our driver partners and our riders to feel that exact same way. And so we're taking steps as a company to kind of like really build that sense of like trust in the sense of like welcoming, safe, supported, and proud. And we actually have initiatives right now happening to really build up that love with our drivers.
Okay, great. So any questions, comments?
Breton. Yeah.
Thanks. Quick question. Oh, cool. Thank you, Brent. All right. So do you look at just veteran, or do you dig a little deeper? And when I ask that, I mean, some companies have veteran hiring initiatives, like Accenture, but in reality, they only focus on JMOs who only account for like 10% of the military, and they're not very diverse in that regard.
So we actually are not. If you're familiar with like what companies like Atlassian or like other larger companies that are a bit more established are doing, we don't really want to set quotas or numbers. What we do is like really invest in partnerships, and then we track like based on the number of diverse candidates that enter into the pipeline, how many actually convert and how many do we push to actually hire. So we'll never set like a quota number of like we want this many veterans from like this many different backgrounds. But our goal is that like if what we can get good at and what other companies really fail at is the whole idea of like first getting more veterans in general to go through the pipeline to like become candidates in our pipeline, and then making sure that those candidates are successfully getting jobs. So I think actually like differentiating between like types of veterans might be something that like as we get more sophisticated, we'll definitely look into. But I think like the reality of Uber right now is we're just starting out on a lot of diversity initiatives. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
What would you say is the value of network? Yeah.
I think, you know, you probably have numbers on this, but 80% of your jobs are going to be through networking, something to that effect. It's critical to have at least somebody, you know, giving you a little push. There are these great stories of people who just send a resume into the website and get hired, but I think by and large, you're going to, you know, the more people you know, the better off you'll be. I don't know, Sean, if you want to add.
There are actual statistics out there for the amount of work you'll get either through networking, through a professional reference, a personal reference, or somebody who can connect you with the right opportunity or the right person. I'm not going to lie, from the recruiting aspect, reaching out to us, we'll never complain if you want to make the job easier as well. It does go a lot better than sending out resumes to every opportunity you see. Really try and focus on one you're actually interested in and seeing if you can find somebody to talk to. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. It doesn't have to be digitally. You can go to hiring fairs. You can see if there's a email list or anyone else you want to connect with as well. For us specifically, it's to make sure that you're also getting in touch with us as well, because we do lose things in translation a lot, especially because we do get millions of people who apply to Uber every year. And we want to make sure that we try and give every single person a chance.
How, I mean, you guys are all the networkers here. You came out and actually engaged, but how difficult was it to make that transition from the military where you didn't network to the civilian world where networking is expected?
Wow. Yeah, when you're used to being told what to do all the time and what specific job you're going to cover, it can be very scary to get out there because you don't know initially what to do or what skills you need, or as we kind of harked upon earlier, if you have to take a step back, not necessarily in a leadership role at a company. But that doesn't mean it's not something you can't learn and progress through. You can use that to start a new career or a track, and also use your networking skills that you pick up to advance your career. Find a mentor, find friends, somebody who does something you're interested in, and say, hey, I'd like to learn a little bit more about this from you. Ask any single director, vice president, or leader from our company. Nobody ever started out at the top. Every single role they ever had, every single thing they've ever done was a learning experience, and they had the help of others there as well. So you did take a huge step by coming out to talk with us tonight. Continue that opportunity with your first role or any role you're interested in, and we're happy to guide you along the way.
Yeah, I think Sean spoke well, but I think it is different because you come out of the military and it's sort of it's very much against the culture to start networking for personal gain. So I think that is hard to transition, but to Sean's point, I mean, it can be a very natural, authentic thing. You have friends who work in these places. If I'm genuinely interested in your company, what do you do every day? Find a way to try to help other people who are in positions you want, right? There's a way to do it that is authentic, is sincere, and will help you get to where you want to go. I think just recognizing that it's not all sort of these sleazy stereotypes is the first step, and then let it happen naturally, and it will happen. It will help. And there's a veteran out there who will help you, but almost guaranteed. He'll at least take that coffee with you and point you in the right direction.
The only comment I have is that also sometimes like just being like sleazy with it is fine. I really think I don't know, I just really think that I think of even just me, I insisted about what I wanted, and then I created a job. I'm not even joking. The way a lot of this diversity stuff got started is because a lot of people were just really noisy about it. And we insisted on it, and then we spoke to a bunch of people, and we just kind of kept talking until we were heard. So I actually think in a lot of tech companies, especially, because if you think about the nature of startups, they happen because people insist they should happen. So I actually think it's fine to be a little insistent and a little just show up all the time and talk yourself up, because I actually think that resonates with this culture.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think what probably happens, with most military folks, and this is what I saw as a recruiter for Dow. So job search in the military is like a logistics problem. At a particular point, you're going to send all the people and all of the opportunities, and you're just going to match them on the basis of the ranking of the individuals, right? So what's common, and I actually just chatted with a friend of mine that is in Navy manpower, and it's very common for someone to just call up and say, what do you got? What are the options that are available? That is not acceptable in the civilian world for job search at all. And you'd be astonished how many times when you go to these job fairs and things like that, and a military person shows up and they're like, what do you got? I'm like, I have the internet. I have a careers page that explains all the things that are available. And you have to, as an individual, show that you've gone and done the easy bit. You've gone on the website, you know what the company's mission is, and you know why you want to wind up going there. So yeah, it's very different. The networking is really important, but you have a lot of work that you have to do beforehand before you're regarded as a serious candidate showing up at these organizations doing, advocating for yourself and championing for yourself. So I'm going to take one more question and then let everybody get back to networking. So any questions out there from the audience? Anyone at all? Do I need a cold call? Someone just at school? All right, Philip, what do you got? Here you go. Just so we can hear you.
So I'm not too sure if I'm going to echo his question, but I want to know more specifically. You have companies like Google per se. They have Google Veterans Network. where they have a specific programs where they specifically go after veterans and they somehow make it work. They connect you to other veterans and so on. Now, did you mention that Uber currently has that or is working on that or is trying not to do that?
No, I said we're not working on quotas or quota hiring, like for
Okay.
specific veterans. We're definitely working on building like networks, and then like I was even talking about this earlier, like buddy programs or like things that help like get underrepresented groups, not just veterans, but like all types of underrepresented people through the pipeline process of hiring, and also like really investigating like how do they feel about that process? Because I think like something again that companies are missing is like, how is the process itself making these candidates feel? Do they feel like we're on their side and we want them to show up and do their best in these interviews, or are they just showing up and getting the same treatment as everybody else? So yeah, the answer is like, we're definitely digging in deep and trying to figure out like, what is the secret sauce, not just that other companies are doing, but maybe even that other companies are missing.
Okay. And a follow-up to that, how far out are you guys from actually completing something?
So far, all I can really say is that our new hiring processes are scheduled to begin around beginning of 2018. We literally, like I said, like this training process is brand new. The team is only 7 months new. So the diversity team itself has not been around that long, but I will say like in the 7 months that we've been a team, we've done a lot of work. And I think per our strategy, one of the first things that we wanted to make sure we were doing is getting the mindsets and, you know, really impacting hearts and minds before all these new systems roll out. Because if you just roll out a bunch of new systems without people that really believe or have bought into them, they're probably not going to work. So that's what we targeted first. And then we know that the systems take a little bit of time to bake.
Awesome, thanks.
Speaking from the Veterans ERG group specifically, we will work in 2018 to increase our outreach efforts through hiring events, community fairs, university hiring fairs as well. But for us, it's a learning process as well. What we need to know is what would work best for all of you. For us to reach out to you, is it more face-to-face interaction? Is it easier for us to channel with you digitally through websites or through social media? Really, what's the best way for us to provide opportunities to get in touch with you? So I want to focus our efforts with the ERG group on increasing not only our work with the diversity and inclusion teams, but also with our recruiters as well to help them get in touch with everyone who's looking for work here.
I know that Facebook, they specifically have a veteran recruiter.
Mhm.
That was her only job, was to recruit veterans. So, and it's since changed and so on, but I don't know if that's an initiative that you guys would take on, but that's how I've seen that done through that company.
If that is an opportunity that comes up in the future, it's definitely something we would explore. We don't have anyone focused specifically in that area right now. That being said, we are looking to educate our current recruiters into better screening military applicants so they understand how to translate their current skills and also to better communicate with them about career path and what they're interested in. For a lot of it, there just are not very many veterans within our recruiting community. So a lot of it is just education and showing them all the contributions that you can give to Uber.
I think it's also worth pointing out that we're still a relatively young company. We're 7 years old. I mean, Facebook's 15, Google's 20. They're 4 or 5 times our size in terms of people. So I think, you know, I know we feel like we're a big company now. We've been around a while, but we're actually still quite young. So
Yeah, I like to think of us as like a really, really large like toddler, because a lot of these things are they're just so new, but we're so huge that people forget we're still so young. But I just think like, you know, we did just actually hire like our first like diversity recruiters. Like we posted for those jobs. We now have like positions that target building partnerships with diversity nonprofits and things like that. And so I think you'll start to see more of that get built out, but we're really just at the tipping point of starting that conversation.
Can you just restate your question?
Yeah, I say again. I'm currently a reservist. On my resume, there's two components. There's the military component and there's a civilian component. How do I accentuate or focus on one in order to target a particular job while not negating that I'm also a reservist too, who has qualified skill sets, like mentioned before, leadership, as well as other things?
Yeah. So I would say the distinction as a reservist, I'm going to say no one cares, to be completely honest. They are interested in whether or not you can join the team and deliver the results that that team is looking for. And rarely is there a civilian opportunity to deliver results that's contingent on you being a reservist. So what you want to say is, all right, you know, like in the job description that they wrote, they said requirements, right? What are the things that you have to have in order to be considered for this opportunity? Your description on your resume needs to match that almost verbatim, because people that are looking at your resume are doing so for maybe 6 seconds. So it just needs to pop off the page that you are, you know, the perfect candidate for whatever opportunity it is that they're looking for. And yeah, less than 1% of the people are serving in the military right now. So it's not, you're not gonna get a huge bunch of benefit coming from that military description of it, but you will get benefit from it saying, oh, here's what you guys do, and I've done that. Here's a case, here's the measurable impact of it. Here's how many people I was, you know, leading in order to affect that sort of change. So my guidance to you is just to recognize that you are competing with people that are not reservists, right? And a lot of them are getting the job, and they're doing so not saying that they're a reservist. Now, is this to say that you need to be ashamed of your military service? Not at all. But I want to make sure that you're articulating it in a way that a civilian would understand and can easily then turn around and advocate for you to a potential hiring manager. And be like, wow, this person is awesome. Oh, by the way, they happen to be in the military. Does that make sense?
And I think to add to that, one thing that's a revelation for me, which seems like painfully obvious right now, is that you probably need more than one resume. When I got out of the Army, I just had one resume. I would just like jam it down every company's throat, like regardless of what the job was. And you should have 3 or 4 resumes tailored to different jobs you're looking at. And I think that's probably the most important thing you can do.
Any other questions?
So my name's Donica. I have a little bit different perspective. I'm a family member, so I still participate in a lot of the military recruiting initiatives. To this gentleman's point, I've met with companies that have the quotas and have dedicated military recruiters or military family member recruiters. And so much of it comes down to timing, right? We're just getting like big funnel, like if you can get your name, get your resume, get noticed, get referred at the right time. So much of it is timing. I've heard that the best jobs are jobs that organizations or people that know you dream up for you to wrap around your skills. So I think you kind of said, I designed this job, but from the outside, you don't always have that opportunity. You're trying to fit into this funnel. Do you have any advice for sort of a networking approach or process approach to get the right kind of fits when you're bringing pretty substantial skill set to it?
Yeah, I know this is different, but so way back in the day, I also know that I don't look my age, but way back in the day, I used to be a classroom teacher. And I really used to teach the skill of like turning what you've done into like valuable skills that are the concrete that people can attach value to. Because if I went in and I was like, I lesson plan for 6th graders, like people are going to be like, well, why are you at a company? Like, don't you just want to go back and teach, right? And so I had to like make all this stuff, like embellish it in a way that like let people know I had like data skills, right? Because I was like, I track student data all the time. I should rephrase that as I have extremely high analytical skills and I can attach behaviors to data, right? And like, I just got really good at like pulling my skills out and turning them into things that I knew any recruiter would say that's awesome. So I think that's my advice, is to like listen to the vernacular that people are using and pick up on the buzzwords that like fly in that field that you're interested in, and then market yourself into those like containers, those buzzwords. That's like the best advice that I have.
Yeah, and I think kind of building on the point of having multiple resumes, right? Like I think of your military experience as like raw material, and it's just kind of sitting there, and you've got to shape it, and you can shape it in many different ways. I think it's a great example of like, data analysis out of lesson plans, right? There's 100 ways to do that with your military experience, but you've got to really be in tune to what that company wants. You got to mirror their words. But I guarantee you can take whatever you have and you can shape it 3 or 4 different ways, and it'll be really effective.
Really what you're getting into, especially when you're trying to get your foot in the door with a role that is clearly outlined, is not so much, do I meet the criteria? But the other thing you want to communicate is, what would you do with this role? Like, what would you do to grow yourself, the role you're in? What would you do to go above and beyond the current requirements? And where do you see yourself going in the future? It's not so much like, hey, I need a job. It's, what would I do with this particular position? That's really what gets a recruiter's attention, and also really excites the person you're going to be talking to, be it a hiring manager or a team member or whoever you get that next step with as well. Think of it as just a stepping stone for what you're going to do.
I had a quick question. Can you talk about the role of the recruiter and in the recruiting process vis-a-vis the hiring manager? Like, what exactly is the recruiter doing, and how do they then communicate with the hiring manager?
So here in particular, in my experience with recruiting, we have a lot of different roles that are filled. We have sourcers, such as my associate Dylan there in the back. His job is actually to swim through the large pool of resumes that we get on a day-to-day basis, or specifically to reach out to people for certain jobs that we feel they may be a good fit for as well. For most entry-level or beginning-level jobs, you will primarily be going to people who will look for you to meet a certain minimum criteria set, such as, hey, do you have a technical or coding background? Or if it's for a sales or management job, saying, hey, what's your tenacity like? Are you a go-getter? Like, are you a very energetic person? So really what the recruiter job is, and also a sourcer, is to see what role you're the best fit for. They're not there to disqualify you or say, no, you can't do this, but saying, hey, maybe if this is what you like to do, or this is what your background fits, you should come talk with us because we think you would be a good fit for that. Their role is to really go out and get in touch with you if they think you're the best fit for the role. And they do get thousands upon thousands of people reaching out all the time. So what makes it much easier for them is to basically see what you really want to do with that particular role and what sticks out either on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, or just another way for you to showcase yourself to them as well. And like they said, don't be afraid to be a little sleazy. If you have to message someone directly on LinkedIn, if you see a recruiter, or if you see one of us in the veterans community who happens to work in recruiting, you can feel free to ping me. Don't get me wrong, my turnaround time's not always the best. So, but I'm always more than happy to talk with you if you're interested in a particular role as well. And so is any recruiter, for the most part.
I just want to add that I really, no joke, when I was going for this job, I found the sourcer for this job on LinkedIn, and I like pinged them and I was like, hey, it looks like you have a lot of openings. I have this background, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, oh, sorry, we actually just filled all those, but I'll keep you in mind for the future. And then I'm not joking, like 6 months later, they were like, hey, we just had 4 of these same type of roles open up. You still interested? And I was actually like already really happy in my job at Pandora. And I was like, well, I mean, they did reach back out, so let's just investigate it. And then the sourcer put me onto a few other jobs that were a good fit. But I actually think that like, it was my initial tenacity to just be like, hey, I could apply, but I also could just ping the sourcer directly, which I know is like a little bit risky, but like they kept me in mind for a future position. So I actually think like if you're good at like pitching yourself, and again, you know like how to market like your core skills, I think there's no harm in doing that.
Great. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there, and we thank our panel. food and drink for us back there. So go ahead and feel free, and hopefully you make some connections as well.